Hey everyone, and welcome back to today. I am so excited to bring you this very special guest, a dear friend, and just beautiful, magical light worker out there doing the work. And it's so beautiful to have witnessed Natalia's journey over the last X amount of years, watching her step fully into her power, really leaning into her astrology and psychic abilities. It's just beautiful to see her take her wisdom and turn that into a practical plan to relate to your purpose and how you can impact the world. I think she just bridges the gap and makes astrology so fun and so enticing beyond just your normal sun, moon, and rising. She's really opened the door for me to explore more of how my unique voice and messaging and where the hell my Jupiter is and why I'm so psychic and why I can't avoid this work has really made so much sense to me. So we're just so thrilled to bring you Natalia Benson today. Thank you for joining us here on the Elevated Life.
Oh, babe, it is my honor. I just love getting to connect you with more, babe, and meeting your amazing partner. And I'm super stoked. So thanks for having me.
Absolutely. You just exude this calm, beautiful. There's not a lot of people I can actually listen to their voice for a long time. It's just something that just, there's it's like my problem with yoga studios. I'm like, oh, I love the class, but could not listen to her any longer. But your voice, babe, I don't know what planet needs to be where to have such a dreamy, captivating voice. Like it's just so stunning.
Wow. Wow. Well, the first thing I thought as you're speaking this first, freaking thank you. That's like the kindest words to share with an Aries, of course. We appreciate a compliment, but also it's that sun in the third, I think. And what else is going on? I mean, Venus and Pisces, like, it's funny because, and that's such a gorgeous reflection to receive because I don't know. It's just it came with the territory, and I'll never forget the first time I heard my voice because I didn't used to talk like this. And sometimes if I'm hurried or I'm in a toxic space with my productivity, I don't think I'm as dropped in. But I remember the first time I ever really heard and accessed this tonality, I'd say, was when I was in a deep meditation and like I don't know, some meditation group in LA a long time ago. And I remember people were like, whoa, you need to like record meditations. And I was like 23 years old, addicted to substances. I was like, what? But there was something that really spoke through me. And now yeah, we don't have to go on that tangent, but it's just very, I appreciate receiving that reflection. And it is interesting because the sun in the third can definitely have this like tonality or even just like a relationship to communication. So yeah, I appreciate I'm going to live a month off that compliment. So thanks, babe.
Oh my gosh, I love it. And you've already started talking a little bit about your journey. I'm curious, how in the world did you get started in all of this? I mean, and how did you, not only did you get started on your own personal self, but when did you make the crossover saying, I'm going to bring this to other people too? I want to teach this. I want to help people solve problems in their lives. Like, how did all that begin?
Oh my gosh, I love that. Well, I mean, honestly, like speaking into that season of my life, I moved to Los Angeles. I was 21 years old. I always say my spiritual awakening in air quotes because I never want it to sound so profound and like ungrounded, but I did have essentially this awakening when I was 19 that I'm more than just a mind and a body. I have a soul. Like there is uh, not only a consciousness, but a source consciousness that's guiding my life. And that happened at 19. Then I moved to Los Angeles and got heavily addicted to drugs because I had a lot of just early experiences that were traumatic and that occurred throughout my life, lots of bullying and humiliation. So my body felt like a very unsafe place to be. So move to Los Angeles, you've got all this undigested, trauma and pain, and then mix in a lot of insecurity. And before you knew it, like I was just partying like there was no tomorrow. I literally almost wanted there to be no tomorrow. But at the same time, I also started to learn astrology. And I had a Gemini guy break up with me, and I'll never forget the day my Taurus friend sat me down. I was so upset about this breakup, and she said, "Have you ever heard of astrology?" And I'll never forget that moment because that was really the beginning of my journey as I like to call myself, a student of astrology, a practitioner, because to me it is never ending. I never call myself an expert in it. I'm a student of it. And the funny thing about my personality is, and I'm sure you both are the same, it's like when we access something that helps us, we can't help but scream it from the rooftops, and we want to support others with it. So the funny thing is, and I actually wrote about this, of course, as an Aries, my first book would be an autobiography. Like, who am I to write my own autobiography first book? But it's very Aries. And I actually reflected on this process of, like, I started to witness the self awareness that astrology was bringing to me and how it was helping me. And I can't speak about astrology without tarot, because they were really hand in hand for me at that time. But what's so fascinating is, as soon as I started to get a handle on the system, I couldn't wait to share it. And I started reading charts for free. I started reading cards to any unsuspecting human or dear friend. I was like, I just wanted to share. And something in me was like, I want to get better at this, because I'm seeing the profound just experience that this is having on me, or rather the profound effect that this is having on me, and I want to share it. And then along the journey as well, I started my first business at 19 years old, had my first business till I was about 27. And all the while, when I stopped cold turkey doing drugs and alcohol, I went deep, deep, deep into yoga. And this is really where, like, I'd say my relationship to my healing and my self accountability really began. And then the business and the money stuff, that didn't really start until my later 20s, when I sat down and I was like, being broke is so fucking boring. I'm so over myself. And I hope it's okay that I cuss.
Oh my
But
God.
but it just really was this experience, probably around 29, where I was like, I'm so done. Like, I can't like, why do I think that having $50 in my bank account is okay? And I just lived on the brink of, like, chaos all the time, even through my spiritual practice. So even though I had captured and I was working with the energy of astrology and tarot and my spiritual practice, I was perpetually broke and perpetually, just like I said, on the edge of chaos. And I just got used to that. And around the age of 29, I sat myself down and I was like, I'm going to teach you how to be wealthy. I'm going to teach you money. And so, what I love about astrology is that it responds to us, because it's a very intelligent system, and the system contains everything. So it's like, I loved that reflection you gave to me, Britt, but it's like, it's so cool, because if someone is obsessed with teaching people about relationships, well, astrology speaks into that. Someone's obsessed with teaching you about your purpose or money or business, well, astrology covers everything. Basically anything under the sun, astrology will cover it. And so this is very recent over the years of, like, really honing in and focusing on the financial acumen and the financial empowerment piece. But I just find that the astrology, it makes it approachable. And I feel so grateful and so privileged to be able to share it. I've had a long journey, 13 years ongoing of, studying astrology, being a student of it. And it's just cool to see not only how the world is caught up, because it was not always like this. Like, I was broke for a reason. It wasn't just because, I had a business and I did events and I read tarot, but I really witnessed a shift kind of starting in, like, 2017, where and look, it could have been before or after. I was living in LA at the time, but I just felt like there became this light switch, or this faucet that turned on, and people were more open. And then that made me feel even more excited, because I was like, well, right place, right time, because I've been over here alone in my apartment with my crystals, meditating by myself and doing all this stuff. And then it's like, when the student is ready, the teacher will appear, and Instagram and all of these different things came together. And I was like, cool, like, let's go. But again, like you mentioned, I think before we hit record the recording, like just my guides, like I've only recently learned how to listen to them, but they've always been in my ear and in my corner and guiding, hey, time to learn astrology. Hey, time to learn mediumship. Hey, time to heal XYZ. And it's just like, it's just so cool. It's just profound. But I love that question, and definitely been a process and a journey for sure.
I think you really kind of gave the cheat codes to everyone listening, and it reminds me so much of my journey too in 2012, the awakening, or that near death experience where like, what the fuck, my inner voice is talking to me and it's trying to keep me alive. Like I should probably pay attention. Wasn't that just like such a
Yeah.
beautiful reflection of like taking me on a journey of how I got into tarot and yoga and astrology? And it was right after that near death experience in Colorado that one of my hair clients sent me. She was very interesting. Her mom was a Buddhist, but she's like a white girl, and she's teaching me about chakras and pendulums. And I'm like, this lady is wild and I love her. Like, tell me more. And her daughter sent me an excerpt from, she asked my birthday and Chris's birthday. And I'm like, well, that's interesting. Like, okay, whatever. And she sent me an excerpt from the book Star Signs by Linda Goodman. And it was about Libra and Aquarius. And when I read it out loud to Chris, sitting in that little cabin in Telluride, Colorado, I cried from the deepest place of my soul. And I
Yes.
was like, how does it know me better than I know myself? Like,
Oh,
how did it just describe me so well, like, and you so well, and so opposite of each
oh,
other? So it's not just like a blanketed, like, you want more money, great, like it shook me. And so in 2012, I made a vow to my intuition, which saved me from dying on that mountain, that I would start to pay attention to those weird guidances and those weird nudges. And it led me to go see a psychic in 2012. And when I sat down with her, she said, honey, you have the gift, buy yourself some cards and start reading, but don't sleep with the
wow.
tower and the devil together under your pillow. I was like, what the fuck is even going on? So when I see you share your tarot and the fact that you have the Thoth tarot, that shows me how deep you're into this practice. And
I'm so
it just
honored. That's like the best compliment anyone's ever given me in my entire life.
we'll just keep putting them in your jar today, okay?
Yeah, I'm here for
It's just
it.
when you find people like-minded, like-hearted on a similar mission,
Yes.
like living outside the bounds of culture and society, but doing the work to bring us all back together, like you want to honor that. You want to
Mm,
secure that relationship because like you said, you felt alone. I felt
yes.
alone. Every client that sat in my chair for over 15 years said, I feel alone. I don't really have friends. And I got really tired of hearing that from myself and from everyone else. So I
Yes.
did something about it. And I
Yes.
started pulling cards for my clients. And that was, I lost some and I gained some, it is what it is. But it took me the confidence to come out of the spiritual closet in Texas, like LA, fine, whatever, you blend in.
Oh,
Texas,
yeah.
holy shit, try being a fucking psychic vegan here. It's with pink hair. Okay.
Oh
Like
my
you
God.
stand out. So it's been
Yes.
this like decade journey of allowing myself to come home to who I knew I was from that childhood. I don't know if you said it before we hit record or not. I think after you talked about being bullied as a child.
Yes.
Same, girl. And it's because we are that bright light and people don't know what to do with it. And so we
Yes.
diminish it. I always say I took my square or my star-shaped self and shoved it in a square-shaped box because I grew
Mm.
up in a country town of 3,000 people. So I'm curious, before we dive in deeper to the magic, where did you grow up? That was something I was curious that you didn't share. Like, what is
Oh yeah,
what is
yeah.
that background story?
Oh yeah. So I'm from Arizona. I was born in a place ironically called Moon Valley. So that's where I was born. But I grew up in a place called Awatuki, which not many people have heard of, but it's like a little suburb in Phoenix, the capital. Interesting, not to go too deep down that rabbit hole, but I loved my upbringing. Like I loved where I grew up. But it's interesting. I talked on the phone to an old friend. I knew her when I was, from middle school onward. And she said something to me that I'll never forget. She's like, because I didn't realize that disassociation was a trauma response. I just was like, I'm just figuring it out. And I hadn't really owned what was going on. This was actually just a couple of years ago. And she said, Natalia, you really, really went through it. She's like, it was intense to see how these guys treated you and also how obsessive everyone was with how everyone looked. I don't know if that's a universal thing in the United States, but where I grew up, there was this just odd obsession with how do you look? Are you good looking? Are you not? And if you're not, and in my case, I just looked unique. Like my family is, Ukrainian, English, Swedish, German, like whatever's going on here. And it just somehow, and like you said, Britt, the light, like I think that, again, something I reflected on in my book where I was just like, I look back and sometimes I wonder if I hadn't been treated the way that I was, would I have developed the empathy and the depth and even, and just to be completely transparent, I recognize that my original desire to be known was not rooted in a healthy place. It was rooted in like, I need to prove that I am worthy. Because when you have people, humiliating you and embarrassing you, and they're not doing it to any of your friends, I made this story up and this identity of like, I'm not attractive, I'm not worthy. And that carried with me. And then moving into my 20s, and then we love LA, okay? Los Angeles is wonderful in so many ways. I built so much of who I am there. But then bring someone with deep insecurities, again, undigested traumatic experiences, and then you're in a city like LA with other people who are very, ungrounded in their healing. And I just moved through so much shit. And I look back and contextualize all of it. And while I love where I'm from, I have so many good memories, truly awesome from where I grew up. I also understand that at the bigger, the highest level, objectively, all of that happened and I called in or contracted in. This is just, I don't put that on anyone else to own that perspective, but it's something that I've chosen to look at my life. I just see it as like, would I have become and created the person that I am now without any of that? And maybe the answer would have been yes, but that's not what happened. That's not my lived experience. So I look back and I'm like, fuck, like Arizona was special and I love being from the desert. But yeah, there was some very like unfortunate shit that went on that was like, it was just coming from pain. And speaking about our guides, they're popping today. They got lots to say, but I just remember like I was in 6th grade and it's the first time I heard them speak to me. And they said, people who treat you like that are having unhappiness at home or something like that. Because I'll never forget now that I can hear my guides and my higher wisdom, my intuition so clearly, I remember the first time I heard them because when I was so hurt by what would go on, I was like, why me? And I just heard this voice very clearly. And what 12-year-old is thinking in those terms? You know what I mean? Of like, oh, they're from a broken home and there's a lot of pain. But I just remember a very clear thought coming through that said, when people treat you like that, they're hurting and there's a lot of trouble in their household and you don't need to take it on. But yeah, not that I didn't really listen because I did take it on for many, many years. But, that's part of my memories from Arizona, but also in so many ways. And what's really funny is everyone thinks that I'm from Sedona. And I'm like, I didn't really become associated with anything metaphysical until I was 19. I had left Arizona. So people always ask me like, are you from Sedona or do you love Sedona? And Sedona is very special, but it's just kind of funny because I don't really have many memories when I'm young. Like I think maybe I saw things when I was very, very young and I turned off my third eye because I was like way too scary. Actually, let's just, in the sake of being totally transparent, we don't have to go down this rabbit hole, but I feel like I had something happen when I was like very, very young. And I slept on the floor of my parents' room for 2 years. My poor parents. Mick and I are about to have kids. And I'm like, whatever you need, but like that's a lot. And I don't know what happened when I was really, really young, but I definitely have always had a little bit of a fear of the unseen, that only this year, as I'm nearing my North Node return, my nodal return, am I just completely wiping the slate clean and being like, you can't be afraid of the unseen realm. So anyhow, definitely a journey, but that's where I'm from, good old Ahwatukee, Arizona. And I lived there till I was 18.
That's such a beautiful story. And no, the answer is no, you wouldn't be the same person, period. Period. Because you're right. It's those hardships that develop our courage, our empathy, our
Yes.
strength, our confidence, our boundaries. Although we don't get straight to them right away, they plant the seed for us to kind of reclaim them later with that conscious awareness.
Yeah, you know, it's really interesting. I was talking to a guy who's a master gardener, and we were at this big expo. They're teaching gardening. I love gardening. You know, it's a thing.
Oh,
But
that's so cool.
I want to ask questions. I'm a big like, tell me how you know the stuff. Like, tell me the
He's the
secrets.
Aquarius.
Yeah, I'm telling me the
Love.
secrets. And so I was like, he goes, I do one specific technique that makes all my plants outgrow all the other plants. I'm like, oh, please hook me up. What you got? He goes, I snap, twist, and break the stems. And I was like, that sounds really violent. He goes, the trauma causes them to grow stronger.
Oh my God,
And
I
in
have
that moment,
chills.
it's like my brain was like, oh, I'm sorry, what did you just say?
So everyone go snap your weed plants, okay?
So it was just the way that he said it. And he said, I hate doing it because I know that I'm hurting them. But he goes, at the same time, I know that I'm making them better. And so it always makes me think, when he said that, it's like all the memories that I had through my childhood and all the times that just didn't work out kind of quickly flash. And it was like, I had to have those. Not only did I have to have those, but in a way, I almost have to be grateful for them because I needed them, even if they
Yes.
sucked, even if they put me in a position that sucked, even for a long time. It's we need so many of those traumatic events. Everyone's always trying to run from it, but without those, you're never gonna grow.
Well, you can't be
So
the light
good.
without the darkness.
Yeah, it's just never
Yes.
gonna happen. And to your point too, what you mentioned about when you start off wanting to be successful or wanting to be popular or famous or anything,
Yes.
almost always there's a big ego reason. And I think
Yes.
that if we don't have that ego reason, we won't reach for success. I mean, you almost need to be pushed or to be unloved by
And
one
then
of
it
your
always
parents.
transforms once you get to that ruse of the ladder that you think you're going to be fulfilled in this
Literally.
like, okay, I'm going to have enough money or enough Instagram followers or whatever. And then you have the money and then your Instagram account gets deleted and all the things that we went through, you realize that ain't it. And so you have to kind of shift and pivot and find that deeper sense of service. And I feel like that's exactly what you've done.
Yeah. And it always,
Love
once
that.
you get to that point, I feel like it always goes back to the messaging. You start to remember, why did what I'm doing now help me so damn much? Like, why in the world am I so
Yeah,
passionate
why do
about
I even
this?
want to get on Instagram and share in the first place? Because we suffered.
Yeah.
Yes.
So I want to ask you this. Why do you think, you mentioned like 2017 potentially being a turning point? Why do you think it is now that we can actually have conversation about this stuff?
We can put psychic medium back in my bio and hypnotist back in his bio. Cause at first it was like, y'all are going to hell. No way.
So what do you think it is that resonates with people so much now? Like, why are people finding so much that they need? And what can people who want that deeper understanding of themselves, of the world around them, what are some of the things that they can expect to start finding out once they begin that journey for themselves?
Oh my gosh, I love this. Well, I would be amiss to not bring up, the age of Aquarius and the idea that we are moving through a consciousness shift. And, there was something that I learned through one of my mentors, Jai Dave. I don't know if you guys are familiar. He's a Kundalini teacher. And he hosted, oh my gosh, I'm spacing on his mentor's name, but this guy spoke into the yugas. And this is like according to Indian cosmology. And I'm not going to speak it perfectly because I don't know it verbatim, but I will never forget when this man, he was doing like a lecture inside of Life Force Academy, Jai Dave's yoga school. And he was talking about the yugas. And the yugas are these massive spans of time. And right now, supposedly, we are in what's known as the Kali Yuga, the age of darkness. And I believe that there's like Satya, and I'm spacing on the names, but Satya is like the ultimate enlightenment. And we're supposedly in the movement of our universe that when we are in the Satya Yuga, or like, let's say an enlightened like span of time, that we are closest to source energy. It's like there's an alignment. And supposedly right now we're very far away, but we're moving back. And think about, I'm not a history or herstory expert, but I've always loved art history. And when I was in school and my parents wouldn't let me quit to be an entrepreneur, they were just like, no, you're getting a flippin' degree. So I stayed and I was like, well, then I'm going to study photography and art history so I can get out of here as quick as I can. And but I'm grateful that I did that, because learning art history taught me so much about history that I don't remember from high school and from middle school. And what you witness through, let's say, like a culture's art is their consciousness and how they view reality. And the truth is, shit's been fucking dark. And we still have a lot of darkness, of course, but what we would be amiss to recognize is that there is more light. There are more people who want good for others. That shift in 2017, I couldn't tell you the exact days because it's very hard to cite Age of Aquarius, because the reason I brought up the yugas, the Indian cosmology, is that the eons spoken about in astrology, which are super freaking esoteric, my freaking favorite, but it's hard to cite when they begin, because imagine it's like the biggest zodiac belt in the universe and we're moving through it. And so the idea is that we're in this space of the Age of Aquarius, our universe. And I just think, like, I mean, look around, like there is more accessibility to self-awareness in certain parts of the world than there ever have been. And I'm not so naive as to think this is only happening in Southern California, or this is only happening in some places in Texas or in the United States. It's happening everywhere. In many places on the globe, they have had access to spiritual depth and awareness thousands and thousands and thousands of years. And we, let's just say in the West, so to speak, we're realizing that we are suffering when we live from a mind body, solely mind body. It is not meant to be that way. It is not in my opinion and my experience, it's not our deepest capital T truth. We are not just an ego and a mind and a psyche and some flesh. We are so much like, have you guys ever heard, I'll only go on this tangent for a second, but have you guys ever heard of I think it's the MRIs or something that they've taken where someone is in the death process and they actually transition and they literally witness, I don't remember if they say there is a light, it gives me chills talking about this, but a light that goes out of the heart or the top of the head, I don't remember, but probably the crown, I would assume. But that this is really what science is catching up to, be like, wait, there is something that animates us. It's not, we're not just thinking brains. And my obsession, and we need to talk about this some other time, Britt, because I'm obsessed with NDEs. I'm obviously, I don't want to say obviously, but I'm very, very curious and studying how to be a medium and all of these things around just the idea that there is so much more than this. There's so much more than this. And I just think that and I feel that there's some kind of awakening that helps us to see that there's more and that we don't have to live in suffering. And I think that spirituality, while it's not the end all be all solution, spiritual tools, whether it's hypnotherapy or astrology or the psychic arts, these things get to be a tool because we need them. I actually ran into a lady. I live in Laguna Beach and I was in line and I love talking to people. Like I'm like a social scientist, and especially as an astrologer, you're just always talking to people and I ask their sign very unapologetically and I like to chat. Well, this lady was very offended that I asked her sign and I was like, okay. I'm like, that's okay. So we start chatting. And then she's like, I was like, so what was your profession? And she goes, oh, I'm a retired psychologist or psychiatrist. And she said, what do you do? And I said, well, I'm an astrologer, but I mentor people. And she's like, oh. And I was like, cool. Well, good chat. But the beautiful thing about it is, I was like, from her framework of how to help people, she sees maybe what I do as dangerous or off the path, whereas maybe I see what she does as an important adjunct, but not the end all be all. There's space for both. And obviously, it's up to the individual what they feel like they need to heal. But I just think people are sick. People are becoming more and more unavailable for deep suffering. And I've been dealing with this thing with my shoulders lately. It's getting better. And I was like, Natalia, you don't need to suffer. You don't need to walk around with your left shoulder up to your ear. Get on YouTube. So I just started studying YouTube and starting to see how can I, and then I also asked my community, it's like we are truly in the age of information. And
Mm.
I believe that that is also a tool of soul, of spirit, of source, because the more informed we are, the more inspired in spiritation, the more inspired we can live. And I don't know exactly why that happened in 2017, but it was something I witnessed where all of a sudden it became more accepted. And I wasn't this like fringe rando, and people really were open. And, I wrote horoscopes for a couple of years for a big fashion magazine and or online publication. And it was just like, I just feel like, wow, this is happening because people need this. They need to understand that there's so much more.
Yeah.
There's so much more.
We're definitely in that like second wave light worker movement where we are trying to help. um, Leadership is embodiment, right? It's you walk
Yes.
the talk, you set the example by showing them, not telling them. Because my mom told me to
Yes.
love, but she didn't really show me how to do that. My mom
Yes.
taught me to be kind, but you know what I'm saying? So I feel like that part of the shift, like you said, is really having that information, because I always say you change for one of two reasons. You suffer enough or you learn new information. And when we
Yes.
see people embodying those qualities that are of peace and kindness and empathy, I think that has kind of been devoid in our culture for a while. And we're starting
Absolutely.
to see more of it, especially with that shift that we had in 2020, where people start to realize that they are out of control and they
Yes.
need to get a grip on the way that they relate to themselves. Whereas
Oh
I
my
feel like
gosh,
so much
yes.
of our living has been externally, like how we relate to the world, how we relate to our community and our tribe, root chakra. But I think that a part of the shift is going inward and seeing how we relate to ourselves and that source union and that connection. So something you said about turning it off as a kid, like there was this moment, I don't remember when, I was thinking, well, Chris could do some timeline therapy with you if you wanted to just float back over.
Yeah, I'd love that actually. Let's chat, please. I'm so
Do a little,
available.
just like float back over and see what happened to sweet little Natalia. But I feel like all of us are born with this beautiful gift that we do turn off at a young age.
Yes.
I remember I didn't sleep in my parents' room, but I had a full on ritual that when I would go into my room, I grew up in a trailer. So I never felt safe. I never felt grounded. I never felt safe. And so when I would go into my bedroom as a very young child, I had a full ritual. Talk about living intentionally and with rituals and
Mhm.
mindfulness. I had a full on ritual on what I had to do when I turned off the light so that the unseen world wouldn't hurt me or interact
Mm.
with me, because I was a very open, intuitive child. My grandmother has all my grandmothers have psychic ability. So my
Mm.
grandmother's from Iceland. Like it's just a weird, I picked a really cool fucking line and time to come in with all the right qualities and all the things to be able to do this work. And I recognize that now, but I felt so out of place back then. And we do turn
Yeah.
off our gifts. So I think my invitation and just hearing you share that is that there are the people listening to the elevated life are absolutely that same type of powerful light worker that have probably turned off their gifts because they were afraid of the unknown or the unseen. So my
Yes.
invitation would be to start getting quiet, to start looking inward, to do practice of yoga or meditation or just walking and dancing. Like it could be a dynamic meditation where if your mind is active, you can try something a little bit more fluid so you don't feel just like I'm sitting and like I have to be in the Himalayas and have to be perfect and oh my god my brain won't stop like oh my god. So I feel like just sharing, not I don't even have a question or know where this will ping and pong to, but I just feel called to like make notice of we all have this gift but we turn it off, and
Yes.
it's a conscious choice as an adult that usually nudges you to as an invitation to turn it back on. So I'm going to wait. I'm going to say
So
this
real.
so you don't have to wait till a near death experience or shit hits the fan or you stroke out like my mom because she was too busy over giving. I
Mm.
think this is that moment where we're slightly aware enough, where we've been listening to our intuition and noticing the red flags, but not really acting on it. I think
Mm.
action is the name of the game at this time. We like
Oh, I
Aries would
love
love
that.
that, right?
I
Like
know, I was like, "Excuse," I
action.
love my favorite word, but it's so funny because, like, just speaking into a few things that you just shared, babe, like, number 1, action is everything, and this is a it's beautiful what you just shared. I was like, "Oh my God, yeah," because this year, um you know, Britt, you've probably seen me talk about this a little bit, but back in May, I just had a full crash and burn. Like I ended up in the hospital, didn't realize that my body dysmorphia was killing me. It was hurting me. I didn't realize that that toxic masculine programming inside me that was like, if you stop moving, if you stop doing, if you're not perfect, you're never like just, those toxic inner voices. And this was actually on the heels of having a past life psychic reading with Ainsley McLeod after I sat at this very desk and sobbed because I was like, I don't know what to do next. I feel really lost. It's been a huge year of change in my business, with my work, with my life in general. And I just sat here and cried and I was like, I don't know what to do. And then I heard that voice again that was like, well, you're going to know. I said, we're going to help and you're going to know. And I was like, oh, okay, interesting. I'm going to know. And then the next day I got an email that was from Ainsley McLeod's assistant, 3-year waiting list. And that next morning, after I asked for help, it was like, hey, so your spot is up and you're going to get this session with Ainsley. And I was like, holy shit, like Ainsley's so special. He's a Pisces. He's been on Oprah, Ellen, like he's just a special, powerful being. And I had this session with him and he revealed a past life to me that I had already seen myself. Because I told my guides, I was like, I'm going to literally talk myself out of whatever he says. So you need to tell me something so freaking undeniable that my logic can't be like, oh, well, he Googled that or this or that or the other. And when he spoke into this life that I had seen in another session a few years earlier, I just broke. And it opened me in a way that I needed. But at first, I needed to physically recalibrate. And I don't share this as a fear for anyone that you need to go through any kind of crash and burn experience like I did, but I ended up in the hospital because I just didn't realize that my self loathing and that deep perfectionist patriarchal programming was absolutely killing me. And it was keeping me separate from my deep intuition. And when I was healing, feeling better, I got sick. My husband and I got sick at the same time. And then I got this message that was like, study mediumship. And I was like, what are you talking about? It's like, study mediumship. So that's when that all freaking started. But again, I don't think we need to have these crash and burn moments. We just ask, like, hey, I need guidance right now. I need clarity right now. What would you have me do? And there is so much support for us. I truly believe that. And as someone who, even though I'm deeply mystical, I've also always been deeply skeptical and afraid of what the unseen or the spirit world what it means, what it represents. I've seen 2 scary movies in my whole life because I just refuse. I'm so sensitive to that stuff. But it's
Mhm.
like, this year has just shown me that ask and you shall receive, ask for the clarity, ask for the guidance. It will be there for you. And in addition to that, if you listen, you like, what's that saying? Like, God sends a pebble before he sends a boulder. And I don't know, I just love that because it's like we get these messages, we get these bits of awareness, but it's like we ignore them. And I think the practice is of listening, just like you said, babe, like the practice of like deep listening. So yeah, it's been a journey, but that's what's going on over here. Just like, hey, let's study mediumship now and just keep this train moving, because how else can I help people while I'm
Yeah.
here?
I think
And
that question, how else can I help people? How can I serve? The question I ask every morning is, what good can I do today? And I just stay open to
yes.
how that shows up. And I'll never forget this very Christian, Chris's friend used to come over and hang out with us. And he was like, Britt, you should watch Long Island Medium. I'm like, I don't watch
The
TV. Like,
best.
I'm like, I don't, I don't watch TV. Why would I watch this? He's like, I just really think you should watch it. So I told Chris, like, hey, let's watch an episode. So we watch an episode.
Oh.
Halfway through, I'm just bawling like a baby. And Chris looks over at me. He goes, I'm going to turn this off. You're just crying. I was like, oh, I want to do this for people. And he was like, what the fuck? And I said, what the fuck? Like, who just said that? And that was in 2012. And then right after that, I went into a sensory deprivation tank. And in that tank, my biological father, who had passed in 2008, said to me, hey, baby girl, I had to pass in the physical world so I could guide you from the spiritual world. And that was my first, like, very aware and conscious moment that we are being talked to, we are being guided. There is a whole nother frequency channel that you can tune into to access that information. We've got to shift out of beta and into alpha and higher brainwave states to be able to access. Just is it changing the channel and practicing
Yes.
hypnosis. When I went to go see that psychic and she said, buy yourself some cards, medium, all the things, you have the skill. I'm like, I know, that's why I watched The Craft and Teen Witch. And like, I did all the spells and I manifested my man and I did all the flower essences and all the things and it worked. Like, I know it. But after seeing that Long Island Medium, going to the psychic, I bring Chris. I'm like, you got to go meet this woman. She's insane. She knows things like, I don't even know. We sit down. She looks at Chris and she's like, you need to get back into you need to get back into hypnosis. And one of our very first dates 17 years ago, he said, hey, can I hypnotize you? I'm like, sure. Why not? Fun. And it was one session. I was relaxed. I said, I don't know if that even worked. Like, I just feel relaxed. He goes, well, that's what it is. Mind and body relaxation. We didn't do any transforming work or stage hypnosis, like quack like a duck. I was just like, oh, okay. And we never talked about it again. I learned a little bit about why he got into it at 17 to help his mom as an alcoholic. It's like, I knew the background, but we didn't really do anything with it. And when I went to take him to go see that psychic, she's like, you need to get back into past life regression or hypnosis, specifically past life regression. And we kind of looked at each other like, well, that's interesting. Like, wonder what that's about. And
shit show. That's what it's about. It's just past life regrets. This could be a shit show.
Well, let me tell you, you die. Okay. Spoiler alert, in every past life, you die. Okay. And there was trauma. So I, of course, have been the guinea pig for thousands of hours of hypnosis, which I would recommend as a tool for developing your psychic abilities. Because when I first started practicing, I would say, I just see black. I don't see anything. He said, seeing black is seeing something. And eventually with enough practice and focusing, that's really what it is. It's deep internal focus of your imagination. I finally started to get to where I could see the images and the pictures. And one of the very first past life regressions that we did, I went back to a time where I lost a child that was very young. And I made a vow in that life to never have children. So when I met Chris 17 years ago, who had already had a vasectomy and absolutely did not want children, I knew, like, he's the one, that's it. And my internal, I just wrote back on MySpace when he sent me a friend request and a message, like, with my phone number, like, that's it. And I think, to tie all this up is that there's so much deep wisdom for us to access if we just slow down, tune in, and pay attention. Every drug trip I've ever done, they tell me, pay attention. Pay attention. So I'll relay that spirit message over. So if we would just pay attention, slow down, we already know the answer. Every woman I've ever coached over the last decade, I ask about those red flags. They're like, yeah, I knew it from the beginning. I ignored it. We just have to
Yes.
stop fucking ignoring the red flags and take action when we feel like something's off, because we were blessed with these navigational tools and gifts and we've turned them off for the sake of people pleasing. And I think that
Yes.
watching women like you and amazing people like you and just like the beauty of these light working leaders finally having the courage to step up and say, I'm going to make a change. I think that is planting a seed of hope for all of us to realize that no matter where you come from, no matter how bad you were treated, no matter how much trauma, big T or little t, you've experienced, we all have a choice. And I'm going to go back to my favorite movie, The Wizard of Oz. Put your fucking red sparkly shoes on, click them together, and make a fucking choice to change your life today. It doesn't have to be tomorrow. It doesn't have to be when you have a stroke. It doesn't have to be when you hit the hospital because you've been ignoring those signs.
Mm.
I think now is the time for us to make a choice. And when a woman decides, it's done. And I can see that every decision you've made in your life, you've pivoted and made even more magic. So if you're afraid to make
Yes.
that change, what's the worst that could happen? What's the worst that could happen?
I love that so much. Oh, amazing.
I also destroyed my craft room in May. So there was something in the stars. Okay. What new rule? No more goddess retreats on eclipses. Because when I got back from that retreat, we did so much inner child healing work that it got taken out on my craft room.
Yeah, it's bad.
It was bad. So please, and if you're listening and you're in the shit show right now, know that no matter how elevated, enlightened, wise, or loving you get, you still are going to go through hard shit. It's just you have the tools to navigate it and not stay in that rock bottom as long as we're used to. So, Natalia, this has just been so beautiful to get to see your heart and your soul. And, as much as I wanted to dive into all the planets and the placements, you do such a freaking good job on your Instagram that anyone could go over there and start learning today. So before we wrap up, I'd love for you to share where people can soak up more of your wisdom and how they can come join us in MWMM, or maybe they missed the
Yes.
cutoff and they'll have to join us next round. But I'm just so grateful to be a part of your community. It's fun to plug into a new high elevated tribe.
Oh my God, I love having you in there. Like I came in really quick the other night because I forgot to turn off the recording. And I was like, Lolo, did we turn the recording off? And you were sharing, and I was like, oh, I feel so deeply blessed that, women like you find me, that we find one another. And yes, I'm super active on Instagram. It's just at Natalia_Benson. Lots of stuff over on my website as well. If you want to explore how to work together, just nataliabenson.com. I know I have to be honest though, I love an interview where we just get to talk about like the deep esoteric and like the soul stuff, because obviously I love to teach astrology, could talk about it all day, but it's also just, at the core of everything that I do is really the conversation that we had. So thank you both so much. It was so good to meet you officially and get to see you, Britt. And I'm so, so honored. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, it's been such a pleasure. And before we wrap up, we always like to ask, what does living an elevated life mean to you?
Oh, I love that. I feel like living an elevated life for me is living from not only a place of self-awareness, but awareness of other people, like how similar to what you mentioned, like I like to say in the morning, I ask my angels and my guides, I'm just like, show me how to be a blessing to others today. Like, just show me, because sometimes, like, in a let's say lower elevation, I will be more self-involved or not be thinking about another person or how I could impact them. But rather, when I'm in that more self-aware space, I really move from the intention of, no matter what's going on in my life or my busyness, how can I help someone else just feel seen and recognized and loved, even if it's just a smile. So yeah, I love that, because when you live that way, it's magical. And I love talking to people. And I feel like because I move with that space of like, I want to connect or just help someone feel seen, life opens up so much. It's very special.
There's so much opportunity out there for us. There's so many ways, especially as you uncover how to get rid of your own trauma. It immediately opens up new pathways to help other people. This has been such a beautiful conversation. I
Yeah,
just want to say
thank
thank you. Thank you
you.
for all the beautiful things you're putting out into the world and empowering and inspiring people, because We definitely need it. It's definitely a time we need it.
Yeah,
It's all hands on deck. It's just team light. Let's go. Like, let's roll.
man, we need you guys. So have the courage to deal with your shit and then go share what worked for you with the world. It really is that simple. We can totally transform this entire world if we just start taking responsibility and stay in our own lane. So thank you so much for sharing your wisdom. I could be on here for hours with you, so we'll have to do round 2 soon, my love.
Thank you, beautifuls.